A crisp autumn evening had settled over the quiet suburban streets of Bellwood, Illinois. The streetlights buzzed faintly, casting dim yellow hues on the pavement as the wind carried the scent of rain. It was one of those nights when most people hurried home, eager to escape the chill. But for Marcus Bennett, a young black entrepreneur, this night was about to change everything. Marcus had spent years working tirelessly to build his own tech consulting business. He had just signed his biggest client yet, a deal that would elevate his company to new heights. To celebrate, he had taken his mother out for dinner at one of the finest restaurants in town. As he drove home, a sense of accomplishment filled his chest. The rhythmic sound of his car tires rolling over the pavement was calming, but that peace was abruptly shattered by the piercing red and blue glare of police lights in his rearview mirror. His heart dropped. A routine traffic stop? He knew better. Pulling over to the side of the road, he let out a deep breath, trying to keep his hands steady on the wheel. His mother, sitting beside him, tensed up, her fingers gripping the edge of her purse. "Stay calm, baby," she whispered. "Just do what he says." Marcus had been taught this his entire life. His father had drilled it into him from the time he was old enough to ride in the passenger seat. Keep your hands visible. Speak respectfully. Don't make any sudden movements. The officer approached the vehicle, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a confident swagger. His uniform was crisp, his badge gleaming under the glow of the streetlights. He leaned down and tapped the glass, signaling Marcus to roll down the window. "License and registration," the officer said, his voice laced with amusement as if the stop itself were a joke. Marcus complied without hesitation, reaching slowly into the glove compartment to retrieve the documents. The officer glanced at them before shifting his eyes back to Marcus. "Where you coming from?" he asked, smirking. Marcus hesitated. "Just had dinner with my mother, sir." The officer let out a short chuckle, shaking his head. "Dinner, huh? In that car?" He gestured toward Marcus' sleek, black Tesla. "That's a little fancy for someone like you." Marcus' jaw clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had worked hard for everything he had. He knew this game, knew exactly what was happening, but playing into it would only make things worse. His mother shifted in her seat, her breathing shallow. "Step out of the car," the officer ordered. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "May I ask why, sir?" The officer's smirk widened. "You may not. Step out. Now." Marcus exhaled, unclipping his seatbelt. He had no choice. As he stepped out, the officer crossed his arms, looking him up and down. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for. Stolen vehicle, maybe? Or are you carrying something you shouldn't be?" Marcus remained silent, his pulse pounding in his ears. He knew his rights. He knew he had done nothing wrong. But he also knew that none of that mattered in this moment. The officer let out another chuckle, shaking his head as if he found the entire situation amusing. His hand rested on his belt, near his holster, as he took a step closer. "You nervous?" he asked. "You should be." Little did he know, his body cam was rolling the entire time. And soon, that footage would change everything. Marcus stood still, his hands by his sides, forcing himself to breathe evenly. His mother watched from the car, her eyes filled with worry. She had seen these situations play out before, on the news, in the neighborhood, and in stories shared within the community. But now, it was her son standing under the streetlights, face to face with a smirking cop who held all the power. The officer circled Marcus like a predator sizing up its prey. "So what's the story, huh?" he said. "A black man driving a car like this, wearing a suit? You must be some kind of big shot." Marcus clenched his jaw but remained silent. He knew anything he said could be twisted against him. "You got drugs in there? Guns?" The officer leaned in, eyeing Marcus up and down. "Or maybe you just borrowed this ride from someone else." Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. This is my car. My name is on the registration. If you'd like to run my information, you'll see everything checks out." The officer laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, I'll run it, all right. But while I do, why don't you spread your legs and put your hands on the hood? You don't mind, do you?" Marcus hesitated. "Am I being detained?" The officer's smirk faded slightly, replaced by something colder. "Did I say you could ask questions?" Behind Marcus, another squad car pulled up, its headlights washing over the scene. A second officer, younger and visibly uneasy, stepped out. He glanced at Marcus before looking at his partner. "What's going on?" the younger cop asked. "Just a routine stop," the first officer replied. This guy's acting real suspicious, though. The younger cop's eyes flickered toward Marcus. Something about the scene didn't sit right with him, but he said nothing. Marcus felt his patience thinning. He had complied, stayed respectful, and followed all the rules. Yet here he was, being treated like a criminal for simply existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The first officer turned back to him. Last chance. Hands on the hood. Marcus looked at his mother, her face pale with fear. He sighed and did as he was told, feeling the cold metal beneath his palms. Rough hands patted him down, checking his pockets, his waistband, even his ankles. Nothing. The officer let out an exaggerated sigh. Well, looks like you're clean. Imagine that. He turned to the younger cop. Run his ID. Let's see what we find. The young officer hesitated before nodding, heading back to the squad car. Marcus stood frozen, his fists clenched against the hood. And then, the first officer did something unexpected. He laughed, a low, mocking chuckle that sent a chill down Marcus' spine. You know, the cop said, shaking his head. You people always act like the world is out to get you. Always crying racism and injustice. But look at you. Got yourself a nice car, a fancy suit. Seems like the system's treated you just fine. Marcus gritted his teeth. The words stung, not because they were true, but because of how blind they were to reality. Before he could respond, the younger officer returned, holding a tablet. He looked uncertain. His record's clean. No warrants. Cars registered under his name. Everything checks out. The first officer's smile faltered for a moment before he quickly recovered. Well, would you look at that? He said, giving Marcus a sarcastic grin. Guess you're one of the good ones. Marcus felt a fire burn in his chest, but he stayed silent. The officer handed him back his license, smirking. You're free to go. No hard feelings, right? Marcus took his license with steady hands. He turned toward his mother, who was watching with tears in her eyes. Then, the officer tapped his Bodycam. Good thing I've got this, huh? He said with a chuckle. So nobody can twist the story later. Little did he know, that Bodycam footage would soon be seen by millions, and it would tell a story he wasn't prepared for. Marcus sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel as his mother wiped her eyes. The encounter had left an invisible wound, one that cut deep but wasn't new. It was just another reminder of the world they lived in. But as he took a deep breath, trying to shake off the anger and humiliation, his phone buzzed. A notification, then another. At first, he ignored it, assuming it was work-related. But when the vibrations continued non-stop, curiosity got the best of him. He glanced at the screen. Hey Marcus, is this you? Attached was a link to a video. Confused, he clicked on it. And what he saw made his heart pound. It was the Bodycam footage, leaked. The footage showed everything. The smirking officer. The degrading comments. The mockery. The intimidation. But most importantly, it showed the truth. Somehow, someone had accessed the police Bodycam and posted it online. And within minutes, it had gone viral. Marcus scrolled through the comments, his fingers trembling. This is disgusting. That officer needs to be fired. This happens every day. Glad we finally have proof. _wow. Just wow. The smirk at the end? Chilling. The video was spreading like wildfire. Thousands of retweets. News stations picking up the story. Influencers sharing it. People demanding justice. Marcus' mother, noticing his reaction, leaned over. What is it? Wordlessly, he handed her the phone. She watched in silence, her expression shifting from sadness to something else, something stronger. Baby, she whispered, this isn't over. Meanwhile, at the police station, chaos erupted. Who the hell leaked this footage? Chief Reynolds slammed his fist on the desk, his face red with fury. The first officer, the one who had laughed at Marcus, sat stiffly in the chair, his cocky smirk now replaced with fear. I don't know, sir. I followed protocol. That footage was secured in the system. Well, clearly, someone got it, the chief snapped. We have the entire country breathing down our necks right now. Protesters outside, reporters demanding answers, and the mayor personally calling me for a response. The young officer, the one who had looked uneasy that night, stood in the corner, arms crossed. He hadn't said a word since the footage went public. The chief turned to him. Officer Blake, you were there. Did you notice anything unusual? Blake hesitated. His conscience warred with his loyalty. He had watched the encounter unfold, had seen Marcus treated unfairly. And now, the world had seen it too. But he had a secret. Because the truth was, he had leaked the footage. The moment he had seen how the first officer treated Marcus, something inside him had snapped. He had always believed in the badge, in justice. But that night, that wasn't justice. And so, when he got back to the station, he had quietly accessed the Bodycam files. He had transferred the footage onto a private server. And then, using an anonymous account, he had leaked it online. Now, standing in front of his furious boss, he forced himself to keep a straight face. "No, sir," he said. "Nothing unusual." The chief cursed under his breath. "We need to get ahead of this. Issue a statement. Do damage control." But it was too late. The story was already bigger than them. Marcus wasn't just trending. He was everywhere. News anchors debated the case live on TV. Celebrities voiced their outrage. Legal experts analyzed the footage, breaking down every second of the encounter. And then came the biggest shock of all. A civil rights attorney reached out. Not just any attorney. Elijah Carter, a legend in his field, known for taking down corrupt police departments, winning million-dollar settlements, and forcing real change. His message was simple. "Marcus, I want to help you. Call me." Marcus stared at the screen, his pulse racing. He looked at his mother. She nodded. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about justice. And so, he took a deep breath and dialed the number. Marcus sat across from Elijah Carter in a sleek law office, the city skyline stretching behind them. He still couldn't believe he was here. Just days ago, he had been humiliated on the side of the road. Now, he was sitting with one of the most powerful civil rights attorneys in the country. Elijah leaned forward, his eyes sharp but kind. "Marcus, I've seen the footage. The world has seen the footage. This isn't just a bad cop. We're looking at systemic misconduct. This isn't just your fight. It's bigger than you. But if you're ready, I want to make sure that what happened to you never happens again." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "I want to hold them accountable." Elijah smiled. "Good. Then here's what we're going to do." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were legal filings. A lawsuit against the police department, the officer who had laughed in Marcus' face, and the city itself. "We're suing," Elijah said. "Not just for damages, but for policy changes. Bodycam transparency. Stricter accountability for racial profiling. We're going to shake the system, Marcus. And we're going to win." Marcus' mother reached for his hand. Her grip was firm, strong. "We're with you," she whispered. Elijah nodded. "Then let's get to work." The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the city. The police department scrambled to defend itself. The officer in question was placed on administrative leave, but the public wasn't satisfied. Protests grew larger, flooding the streets. People carried signs. "Justice for Marcus." "End racial profiling." "Accountability now." And then, the mayor got involved. At a hastily arranged press conference, she stood before a sea of cameras. "The footage we have all seen is deeply disturbing," she began. "This city will not tolerate this kind of behavior from our police force. Effective immediately, I am ordering an independent investigation into the department's handling of traffic stops and racial profiling complaints." But it wasn't just words. Under mounting pressure, the city took action. 1. The officer who had mocked Marcus was fired, not quietly, but publicly. His badge revoked. His career over. 2. A new policy was introduced. All traffic stops would now require bodycam footage to be immediately reviewed by an independent oversight board. 3. A community task force was formed, composed of activists, legal experts, and citizens, to hold police accountable. And as for Marcus, his case wasn't just national news, it was global. Major networks covered his fight. Celebrities offered support. Donations poured in. But what truly stunned him was the message he received one evening. A name he never expected. "Hello, Marcus. I'd like to meet with you. Let's talk about the future." It was from the governor. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The future. It was no longer just about what had happened to him. It was about what he could do next. Because for the first time in his life, he had the power to change everything. Marcus sat on a panel stage, a microphone in his hand, as hundreds of people in the audience listened in complete silence. A year ago, he had been just another victim of racial profiling. Another black man harassed and humiliated by a system that had been failing people like him for generations. Now he was a voice for change. Across from him sat the governor, the mayor, and Elijah Carter. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a moment in history. Marcus cleared his throat. When that officer laughed at me, I felt powerless, like I was nothing. But I realized something that day. They expect us to feel powerless. That's how the system keeps going. But the truth is, we have power. When we demand justice, when we hold people accountable, things change. The audience erupted in applause. Elijah smiled. And because of people like Marcus, things have changed. He turned to the governor, who took the microphone. We're proud to announce that, starting today, a new statewide law will require that all police interactions be subject to real-time civilian oversight. Every traffic stop, every arrest, every single incident will have an independent review board ensuring that misconduct is impossible to ignore. The crowd roared. But for Marcus, this wasn't just a victory. It was a responsibility. Over the next few months, Marcus watched as his story became more than just news. It became a blueprint for change. Cities across the country adopted similar police accountability measures. Activists used his case as an example to push for federal legislation on bodycam transparency and racial bias training. And Marcus himself? He turned his pain into purpose. He partnered with Elijah Carter's law firm to start an organization dedicated to fighting racial discrimination in policing. The Justice Project. Their mission: 1. Legal aid for victims of police misconduct. 2. Policy reform advocacy at the state and federal level. 3. Education programs for communities to know their rights. And then, one day, Marcus got a letter from the officer who had mocked him. It was a long, handwritten note. An apology. A confession. I was wrong, the officer wrote. I let my prejudice blind me, and I hurt you. I see that now. And I see how broken this system is. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know, I'm trying to change. Marcus sat with the letter for a long time. He didn't know if he could forgive. But he knew this: the fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But this time, he wasn't just a victim. He was a leader,